speaking of things that people give their attention to that literally don't matter instead of the important things that do matter, Stanford University, which is an Ivy League university where allegedly some of the best and brightest Americans go to study, recently released a new woke language guide. And they said the goal of the Elimination of Harmful Language initiative is to eliminate many forms of harmful language, including racist, violent, and biased, i.e. disability bias, ethnic slurs, gender bias, implicit bias, sexual bias, language in Stanford websites and code. The purpose of this website is to educate people about the possible impact of the words we use. And then it has a content warning that says, this website contains language that is offensive or harmful. Please engage with this website at your own pace. So Brad and I are going to engage with it at our own pace, which is going to be so fun because we've already glanced a little bit over it, and it is, guys, this is a blast. Buckle up, okay?
Yeah, so this is an internal Stanford document that was just published by the Wall Street Journal and kind of exposed this week. Essentially, like their bureaucrats internally wanted to make sure all their documents and code and language and rules weren't using offensive terms. And I have to say, it sounds like something that's going to be absurd. And then it's way worse than you expect. It's literally way worse than you expect. So maybe we'll just go back and forth and read out these lists because they have different categories. So first up, they have the words that are ableist and they are harmful to people with disabilities, such as the term lame, which is apparently ableist language that can trivialize the experience of people living with disabilities.
Well, and okay, so I have to point out the way that they've structured this makes it even funnier because what they have is they have the word that you should not use anymore. They have substitutes that they think are better. And then they have explanation for why you shouldn't use it. And so also under ableist, they have that you should not use the word blind study. Instead, you should say a mass study because blind study unintentionally perpetrates that disability is somehow abnormal or negative, furthering an ableist culture.
What does that even mean? Like, not being able to see is a negative thing. I don't think any blind person would claim otherwise. What?
No, it's like having a disability, like most people do not have a disability, so it is something that is different. Like, it's like they just want to erase reality with these things. And I'm like, I don't get it. I know many people with disabilities, and they're not sitting around wanting people to pretend that they don't have a disability, right? It's sort of just like, this is a part of who I am. It doesn't make me any less of a person, but like, it is something I deal with. Keep it moving.
Also, like, the idea of a blind study is just that they're saying blind as in you can't see it, not as in a blind person, right? Like a blindfold is what there is. Ay, Dios mío. So the next one is the term insane. They say instead you should say surprising or wild, which are not synonyms. They're not, because apparently insane is ableist language that trivializes the experience of people living with mental health conditions. No, it doesn't. This is so cringe. Also, isn't wild offensive to like indigenous and aborigine communities or you could play this game for literally any word?
Well, and I told you in discussing this is something I've actually experienced happen when I've worked around groups on the left, especially with my work around mental health and criminal justice. I've been in rooms where like we're looking over our talking points that we're going to be giving out to lawmakers. We're looking at like our one-pagers or our website language that we're using. And I will have people say to me, like, I remember distinctly one time I had in there, we were working on a bill that would exempt people with severe mental illness from the death penalty. And I had somebody going over my language in the room go, you haven't heard the term suffers from mental illness, and that's like offensive to people with mental illness. You should just say a person with mental illness because suffering implies that it's like a negative condition. And I was like, it is a negative condition. I have a mental illness. It sucks. Like, I have to struggle with it every day. I do suffer because of my anxiety. Like, what are you talking about? And then what makes it even better is somebody else in the room will pipe up and be like, well, actually, you shouldn't say a person with mental illness because blah, blah. And it's like they just keep trying to outwoke each other. And it's like this circle jerk that just keeps going. You're like, oh my God. We're not going to say anything by the time we leave this room. It's phenomenal to witness. I'm sorry. It's like one of those fly on the wall moments I had working left. And I loved a lot of the people I worked on the left. I want to be clear. They were well-meaning, but like it was hilarious to me to observe that. I was just like, okay, let's keep it moving and maybe save people's lives. Like maybe like let's just keep it moving and not sit here and debate language all day. Okay, the last one under ableist that we've selected is you shouldn't say walk-in. Instead, you should say drop-in or open office because ableist language trivializes the experience of people living with disabilities.
Oh my God. So like they're saying some people can't walk. So you can't say walk-in.
Yeah.
This is just ridiculous.
It's like almost offensive. Like that's I feel like it's actually more offensive on its face than the terms that they think are offensive. I'm like, you're sitting here basically like saying to people like, oh well, since you can't walk, nobody can use the word walk.
And they're saying like as if people with physical handicaps are so mentally and emotionally fragile that they're traumatized by a sign at a haircut place saying we take walk-ins. Like I don't think I find me one handicapped person who, of course, handicap is also on their list of problematic words, who is actually bothered by this stuff that isn't a professional victimhood perpetuator, like somebody that works at one of these departments. Find me one real person that's offended by them. You can't.
No, because honestly, your life would have to be so perfect. You'd have to have so few real issues in order to be at a place where you literally care about these things and have time to think about it. Like nobody with a disability could be in that camp because they're probably busy dealing with their disability. Like this is just for like people with nothing better to do with their times. Okay, the next section is great. It's called cultural appropriation. And first on that list is you can't say bury the hatchet. Instead, you should say calls for peace or call for a truce, because using this term is culturally appropriation of a centuries-old tradition among some North American indigenous peoples who buried their tools of war as a symbol of peace. And so we can't say that because indigenous people did that as a sign of peace.
Only Elizabeth Warren is allowed to use this term.
It's like, okay, you can't even mention other terms used in other cultures. You can't even refer to great things they've done or symbols of peace that are beautiful symbols. Like, how dare you?
You're also not allowed to say spirit animal. The term refers to an animal spirit that guides or protects one on a journey. So to equate it with an animal one likes is to demean the significance of the term. Oh my gosh, these people are just inventing fake outrages to no end.
I would say they're on the warpath, but that's also banned. Instead, you should say mad or on the offensive, because that's a term that refers to the route taken by indigenous people heading toward a battle with an enemy. So that's a no-go as well.
But like, so what? It's not enough. It's not denigrating indigenous
That's what's so
people.
funny about all this, though.
All terms have their origin in something from history, like long time ago. Like, so
It's basically saying like you can use any terms that come from Europe or Asia, or like all these different cultures and histories where we pull language from, but if it's something to do with like the indigenous people or people who've been harmed at some point in our history, you just can't touch anything about them because they're just such little weak people. We have to protect everything.
that's like
about
saying
their
I
culture.
can't use Roman numerals because I'm not Roman.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It's exactly the same. It's offensive. This is what I mean. Like, I don't think any indigenous person is like, never use the terms of my people. Like, what? No. I mean, sometimes I almost get it. Like, when they were debating some of the things around, like, the sporting teams, you know, and, like, the mascots that some of the sporting teams use. Like, the mascot the Braves had, or, like, what was the DC team? The Redskins. It's like, I kind of almost get it in those instances because they're using the terms of those people and, like, in a way that is not favorable, and like the mascots were kind of like caricatures and like were kind of offensively drawn with like people having overtly red faces and things like that. Like I kind of get it when we're talking about those kinds of topics where it's like you could see how it's demeaning or like negative towards these people, but these things are not that. They are literally just common phrases and terms that come from history and come from symbols within that community that are like good descriptors. And so in telling people they can't use it, what you're actually doing is telling them like you can't in any way access these communities, these people, these histories, which actually leads to racism. When people don't know and understand other cultures and have an appreciation for them, it leads to stereotyping and looking down on people and like not having an appreciation for their histories. I think this is so stupid. I can't stand it.
so the gender section is by far the craziest section. It says you can't say preferred pronouns. You have to say pronouns because the word preferred suggests that non-binary identity is a choice and a preference. It is. It's not like a thing. Like gender dysphoria is a medical condition. So transgender people don't choose to experience that. Gay people don't choose to be gay, but non-binary, and this they'll probably dig this up to get me canceled in 20 years or something, but I don't really care. Non-binary identity does seem like a choice because it's not actually an intrinsic characteristic. It's like, you saying, I don't feel like this or that, I identify a different way. And Dios mío, I don't know. You can't keep up with all the pronoun stuff. They're also saying preferred pronouns makes it sound like you get a choice. You don't get a choice. You use my pronouns or else.
But it is a preferred pronoun because you're saying I identify, I choose, I pick this pronoun. I prefer you use this one versus the one that you would assume I'm born into. Like, I don't even get into all this, like, gender theory, honestly, like, because I don't care. Live your life. Do what you want. I will do my best to be respectful. But, like, some of this just gets so nitpicky, and it's so ridiculous. But anyways, I'm going to keep it moving. The next thing you can't say is ballsy. Instead, you should say bold or risk taker because this attributes personality traits to anatomy.
No. They're so literalist. With all of this, they're being so literal.
It does remind me of this Betty White quote. Guys, if you have kids listening, pause real fast because this is a dirty joke, but it's funny. Where she said, why do we say things are ballsy instead of saying they're vaginas? Vaginas can take a pounding. And balls are, like, really sensitive.
I pictured
so
Betty
funny.
White saying that, and I don't like it.
It's like a meme with her face that goes around. It's so funny. Okay,
So the next offensive term is freshman, because it lumps a group of students using masculine language into gender binary groups that don't include everyone. Give me a break. Oh my gosh, it just means first year. Same way, apparently, guys is offensive, and you should say folks, people, everyone.
I've been criticized because I say guys or hey you guys all the time. It's like a very Midwest like thing. I grew up in Louisville, like we say you guys. I've actually had people criticize me for this in my speaking and be like, you should use like non-gender things to refer to people, like say folks. And if you listen to people on the left, like Barack Obama, he's always like, hey folks. They're always like folks. And it's because they don't want to say guys or girls.
It's so weird. Guys
so
is
weird.
When you say like, hey guys, that's a gender neutral term already. Like,
I agree. Listen, ladies can be guys too. You know what I mean?
Oh,
you guys, like,
read the next
it's
one.
All encompassing. Oh, you can't say ladies. You should say everyone.
You're lumping a group of people into gender binary language that doesn't include everyone, Hannah. That's problematic.
Brad, are you ready for the next one? You literally can't say he. Instead, you should just say the person's name or they, unless you know that you're addressing them as a he as their pronoun. It's better to just go ahead and assume that they is their preferred pronoun, which is batshit crazy.
Which is not true in 99.99% of cases. But yeah, we should assume that. What?
Just assume. What are you talking about? Like, no.
I found this one funny too. They say mailman is offensive, and you should say mail person, postal carrier, because it lumps a group of public servants using masculine language. It doesn't include everybody. No, it doesn't. Again, it's just a generic term, and there's not a single male person out there who's like, I hate it when I'm called a mailman. Like, no, that's literally their job title.
Also, when I saw this, I was like, I think I just naturally do. If I know my mailman is a woman, I would say male woman. I just kind of would. But, like, if I don't know, then I would just generically say the mailman. Like, who cares? Who cares? I just, again, as a woman, none of this does anything to advance me.
This doesn't keep you up at night?
Or changing this does not help progress me, does not give me a greater standing in society, does not make me feel more equal, more empowered. Like, no. Like, nobody asked for this at all. Let's see what else we got. You can't say landlord or landlady. You should just say property owner. Actually, I think what they want you to say is like murderous dictator, villain of the working class when it comes to landlords. Exploiter. And then you guys is last on that list. So can't say guys. Y'all should not say you guys, which I'm not going to stop. I say hey you guys literally at the beginning of every episode, and I'm going to keep doing it. All right.
So the next category is what they call imprecise language. For example, they say the term American is offensive, and instead you should say U.S. citizen, because the term American refers to people from the United States only, thereby insinuating that the U.S. is the most important country in the Americas, which is actually made up out of 42 countries. Because it is. Obviously and objectively, and never has anyone ever heard the term American and thought that they were referring to, that person is actually El Salvadorian. Like, what?
No. Okay, here's the best one, Liz. You cannot say Karen. It says that this term is used to ridicule or demean a certain group of people based on their behaviors.
What's wrong with that?
Yes,
I don't
I
understand.
do want to demean a certain group of people based on their behaviors. There's nothing wrong with demonizing people based on their behaviors. Like,
The term
behaviors are a
murderers
choice.
really demonizes people based on their behaviors. Like, that's fine. We don't want to demonize people on the basis of things they can't control. But behaviors is totally fair game. I don't know. This is just dumb.
Especially negative behaviors. Like, yeah, we want to demean people who act in a negative way that has bad repercussions on other people's lives. I do mean to demean them. Like, what? What? Oh, God.
Of course, and this is the thing, like, even the woke can't keep up with their own ever-evolving standards. People of color is now an offensive term. That was the woke term until literally 5 seconds ago. But now you're supposed to say BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Nobody in the course of normality has ever said BIPOC in society.
I only ever see it in, like, statements from leftist
Yes.
groups or whatever. It's not a real term anyone uses.
No, and in fact, the people I have seen commenting on this who are within people of color groups say that they hate even the term people of color or BIPOC or any of it because they're like, no, like, I'm Black, my experience is Black, or I'm Hispanic, my experience is Hispanic. Like, stop trying to lump us
It's
all
so
together.
collectivist.
It's so collectivist. Just because, like, we're not white, you basically want to, like, push us into one, like, melting pot and say we're all the same and we've all had the same experiences, and it's
Kind of
just not
offensive.
true. It's very offensive, yeah. You also can't say straight. Instead, you should say heterosexual, because this term implies that anyone who is not heterosexual is bent or not normal.
What? What? Never have I ever, as a gay person, been offended by the term straight.
Implies you're bent.
Yes.
That's funny. Also, you can't say thug. Instead, you should say suspect or criminal, because although the term refers to a violent person or criminal, it often takes on a racist connotation when used in certain circles. No, it doesn't. It literally just, on its face, means a criminal or someone who commits bad behavior. Like,
I feel like these people are telling on themselves. Like, they have these racist associations, and so they're like, that are really not common. And they're saying, this is common. And it's like, I don't think it is, actually.
It's not. When I say thug, I literally just mean somebody who acts like a thug. Like, it's another way of grouping people based on their behaviors and actions. Yes. But if you're, like, attributing a race to that, you're saying that you think Black people are more likely to commit bad behaviors. Not me. That's on you. Like, I don't think that. So, all right. Next, we have the racism section. This one's very interesting. First on the list is you can't say black sheep.
What?
You should instead say...
Black sheep. Read the explanation. Read it. Read it.
It assigns negative connotation to the color black, racializing the term.
I can't even take this seriously. This is supposed to be one of America's elite higher education institutions.
Instead of black sheep, you should say outcast. I'm done. They're like, how dare you racialize a sheep?
You also can't say grandfather, like the term, to grandfather something in, because they say that you should say legacy, because the term has its roots in the grandfather clause adopted by southern states to deny voting rights to blacks. I have a couple points here. One is, that might be true, I honestly don't know, but like, that might be its origin, but the way it's used today has nothing to do with race. So what's the problem? And then also, is it just me, or is referring to people as blacks, which they do in this description, kind of like cringe, outdated language? Like, I would never say, blacks love this, or like, that's a very strange, I would say, African Americans, I would say black people. I would not just start referring to people as blacks. And it's funny that they're doing that in this woke language document.
It gives 1940s grandfather vibe, the blacks. No, like, it's very, very weird that they're using that in this language. I also think when it comes to this, like, this is major care and energy to go back and research the term grandfather, to even know that refers to this clause that was used. And I assume even then it was called that because it had some other origins, right? Like, the nitpickiness around this, that, like, nobody's sitting here thinking about these things or worried about them or even knows them to have this association until you go to great lengths to make a huge deal out of it and to try to, like, make it something you can't say. And it's just such ridiculous behavior. All right, up next, you cannot say uppity. I've actually been criticized for saying this before because I often say that I'm a bit uppity, and I am. I like nice things. I think I deserve nice things. Like, I don't like going to generic places, so, like, I can be a little bit pretentious in some ways, and I've said that before, and people are like, oh, you can't say uppity. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because it was used like negatively in a racial way, like to call black people who wanted to like have nicer things, like that they were uppity. I'm like, okay, but I'm not using it in that way. I'm calling myself uppity. So like, how's that in any way racist or racial? And like, this is what makes me mad, is like some words can be used in conjunction with other words or in certain like settings to where what you're saying is actually racist or negative. But it doesn't mean that the word itself is racist or negative. It just is on its face. It means what it means. Words have meanings. Look them up. Use your basic dictionary and quit being a weirdo. Like,
exactly. So this next one is the term white paper is apparently offensive, and you should say position paper because it assigns value connotations based on color. White equals good, an act which is subconsciously racialized. This is not even correct because a white paper is a policy statement, but it's not like inherently good. Like there are white papers on either side of an issue. It's not because it's white, it's good. They don't even know what they're talking about.
I think it's just called white paper because you write a bunch of words on white paper. But like, I honestly...
Yeah, it's literally that. That's why.
I want to film me and you going around our movement, like the nonprofit liberty movement, and just calling things a position paper and see like how long it takes people to like figure out what we're doing. Like people would be so confused if I was like, my position paper, like on it. I would look crazy. All right, the next section is violence. They say that you can't say beating a dead horse because the expression normalizes violence against animals.
Yeah, every time I hear that, I'm tempted to go beat the crap out of a dead horse.
Yeah. Yes. I actually know several people who have had to go beat horses after hearing this phrase, and it normalized it for them.
Yeah, they also say that killing two birds with one stone is a problematic expression because it normalizes violence against animals.
Also, you can't say killing it or killed it as in doing a great job because doing a good job should not be equated with death. The term could be triggering if someone close to the recipient actually was killed.
What? Oh my god.
No! As somebody who has had loved ones be killed, like, no! Like, that's just... This does not go through the head of normal, sane people, which I know we're not allowed to say sane anymore, but like, listen, this is not normal. This is abnormal behavior and thought patterns if these are the things that you think about when you hear these words.
And once again, the woke are eating their own because they say the term trigger warning is offensive. And instead, you should say content note because the phrase can cause stress about what's to follow. Additionally, one can never know what may or may not trigger a particular person. This is ridiculous.
This is some coddling, pedantic stuff. Like, if, honest to God, if you need this amount of like hand holding and shielding around words, like please go see a therapist because this is not normal. And I don't want you voting and I don't want you around in society and like inflicting this trauma on the rest of us. Like seek help. This is not normal. You should be
That's
really
the other
concerned.
thing too. It's like they're not going to be prepared for the real world. The real world has all these words all the time in use. So why are you trying to coddle them and say like, oh, we can't use these words around our fragile students? Like you're not exactly preparing them for the real world, are you?
I also just want us to be raising people and educating people to actually be people of consequence in the world and to go out and fight real injustices and to do something about the massive amounts of oppression and genocide and hunger and like injustice that we still deal with around the globe, because there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of real work to be done. And when you sit here and tell people it's okay to instead spend their time on this kind of ridiculous, just overtly childlike sort of issues, I just think it equates to a society where you have a bunch of people who are super privileged, who think they're victims, and who sit around wanting to be catered to instead of going out and helping other people. Like, get over yourselves, please, for the love of God. I can't. Ugh.